In this video, I'll be extensively researching just how good Canon's new flagship camera, the R5, actually is at landscape photography. To make the test fair, I'll be comparing the R5 against a camera I recently bought, which is the Canon 5DSR, a camera I bought for £1,200. If you think the Canon R5 costs more, way more than 3 times that, I'll be interested to find out, and I'm sure you will be as well, if the Canon R5 as a landscape photographer is worth A, the hype, and B, the money. Just before we head out and about, I'd just like to thank Readly for sponsoring this video. Readly is a digital magazine subscription service that offers unlimited access to over 5,000 national and international titles. You can browse using your smartphone or your tablet. More on them and the service that they provide coming up. Scenario number 1, woodland photography. Now, I've got a good idea. This is a nice warm-up for the cameras, but better than that, it's also a good challenge. And here's the reason why. There's a particular shot that I took here a few weeks ago using this very same lens, 70 to 200mm. I think I might have been 120mm, maybe 200mm, but I zoomed in quite a lot. So I'm going to try and recompose that, recreate that shot, and take that same shot on both cameras. But I'm then going to take another shot using my 16 to 35mm lens, and obviously it's going to be a much wider shot. So in post-production, I'm then going to try and recreate this shot, this composition, using the longer lens with a wider image. So therefore, obviously, I'm going to have to crop in an awful lot. And I'm interested, when I recreate this shot, when I crop in to these huge files, how much quality am I going to lose, if at all any. I just thought it's a good warm-up and it's a good challenge. That's a really interesting shot. I'm around about 120mm, like I said earlier. It's a busy shot. It's just a bunch of trees. The light is shining, so there's going to be a lot of contrast on this image. And my normal settings at the moment, I will be testing my ISO on both of these cameras later on in this video, but not now. ISO 100 f11, and according to my histogram, I want to make sure there's no clipping at all. That histogram looks good. 30th of a second. Let's grab that shot. Love that. Just going to recreate it using the R5. Remember, exactly the same settings on both cameras. F11 ISO 100, and I'm at a 30th of a second. The settings won't make any difference between them both. Obviously, photography is a science. And that histogram is looking about right. Make sure I focus in exactly the same place, exactly the same composition. 1, 2. And those pictures should pretty much look identical because they've been shot literally a minute between them both. Like that. Good. Now, let's recreate it using a wider lens. 35mm, f11 ISO 100, 30th of a second. The tripod hasn't moved, the tripod head hasn't moved, everything is as it should be. And both of those pictures, once again, should be identical. I think that's a fair comparison, I really do. I'm really interested using these giant files and zooming in or cropping in really tight in post-production, just to see if at all there is any quality lost. Guessing there's going to be some quality lost, but to what degree? I think that's a fair test. I have to move really quick. Apparently I'm not meant to be here, and security have come out. But I spoke ever so nice, because I'm a nice person, and they've given me 5 minutes. So quite literally I've got time to grab one shot on each camera, well maybe 2. I'm going to try and put the 10-stop filter on there, just to see if I can get any movement in these clouds. I very much doubt I will. I need really a 15-stop filter. They're very still. But anyway, I'm rushing. Right, literally I've got time probably for one composition. ISO 100 f16. I'm going to close that aperture up. I'm focusing quite literally a third of the way into the frame. I'm going to make sure I focus in exactly the same place for both cameras, and I'm at a 25th of a second, one shot. Right, so I'm moving rather quick. Same rules apply. Gonna take one shot, then obviously one shot on each camera, but now I'm leaving the composition exactly the same. I'm going to drop my 10-stop filter onto the front, and with a 10-stop filter in this light, the best I can manage quite literally is about 30 seconds. I might be able to push it for a minute. No, it's not a problem at all, not a problem.
I've got plenty of time here, so don't worry. Hope you get some good shots.
Thank you very much. Okay, so 30 seconds. I'm definitely not going to get any movement on these clouds, but I might get something of interest. You just never know. It's like doing a wedding. Rushy, rushy, rushy. I've not even had a chance to wander around. As soon as I came up here, and quite rightly so as well, security was straight on my case. I did walk around the building and knocked on the window up there as well, just to ask permission, and there was nobody about. So I just naturally assumed I'd be okay. To be fair, they were very nice about it. But anyway, let's go back to the shot. I'm going to take just one shot. I'm using this as foreground interest, that as background interest. So apart from this one shot, there's no filters being used at all. And the only reason I'm using my 10-stop filter now, like I said earlier, is just to try and get some movement in the clouds. But what I'm going to do is, because I'm exposing for the sky, and it's a very, very bright sky at the moment, this building is going to be quite dark. I'm going to post-process this image in a style of fine art, in a fine art style, in which case I'm going to have to heavily manipulate the images. So I'm really looking forward to that. Very bright, very dark, very shadowy. Anyway, it'll all become clear in a second, but the most important thing is I'm really looking forward to see how much work I could do with a single image. Ordinarily, if I was going to shoot this shot now, in terms of architecture, in terms of a fine art style, then I would definitely have taken 2 or 3 shots and bracket them together. So I'm interested to find out what I can actually achieve with just one image. A very different scenario. I want to photograph and replicate a HDR image without using HDR. So I'm going to create a HDR image just by using one single file. And I'm going to do that by shooting under the pier. It's just when I've arrived here, the high tide is a lot higher than I first imagined. So in this scenario, I'm opting for a slow shutter speed with a high ISO. I want to test the cameras to see how well they both perform at high ISOs. So to enable me to achieve a high ISO on a bright sunny day, I've applied my 10-stop filter. So at the moment, my settings are a half a second at f8 at ISO 800. Now, of course, I could have applied a weaker neutral density filter on the front of the lens, but I don't want to, because I want to really darken this light down to force the camera's ISO to be raised. Hence the reason ISO 800, f8 half a second. This isn't the main scenario, this isn't the scenario I want to achieve here in Blackpool, but I can't do that yet at the moment because the tide's too far up. So let's grab a couple of these crashing wave shots. That's really nice. As the tide's coming out, that's really nice. Yep, let's do the same with this camera and do the same with the R5. Wow, that's really, really impressive. Just gotta get my timing right for these crashing waves. While I'm trying to find out how good these images are shooting with a high ISO, what I've done now is I've removed the 10-stop filter because I want to achieve 1,000th of a second. For me to achieve 1,000th of a second, my settings are now at obviously 1,000th of a second, f11, and my ISO is ramped up now to 500. Right, the main shot that I wanted to capture here is a fairly straightforward shot. I'm going to see how much of the detail I can pull out of these images in the shadow areas. So I'm just going to grab a wide angle image from underneath this pier, the pier in Blackpool, and obviously aiming out to sea. No filters. Doesn't even have to be a long exposure shot. I just want a wide shot, but shot from underneath the pier. Now, what I'm going to do is expose, as always, for the brightest area, which clearly is the sky. So the sky is very bright compared to underneath here. So when I expose for the sky, I'm expecting the underside of the pier to be quite dark. So therefore, that's a great opportunity for us to see how much detail that we can pull in the shadow areas in this particular image. I'm really interested to find out how well each of these cameras do at this, because ordinarily if I was to grab this picture, then I would take multiple exposures, expose for underneath, expose for the sky, and a neutral one, and then I'd combine them and create a sort of HDR effect. But I'm just going to replicate all of that by one simple file. Let's start off with the 5 DSR. Let's use every inch of this 16mm lens that's on here. So nice and simple. Going to make sure that's nice and level. I'm going to point my camera up as well. So I want to make the underside of this pier a real feature in this image. And to give it a sporting chance, ISO 100, f11. Now let's see where I'm at with my shutter speed. Remember, I'm not that bothered about creating a long exposure shot. I've no time to start dithering around by putting 10-stop filters on the front of my lens, but that's not really what this experiment is all about. This experiment is about how much detail can we pull out in the shade, or in the shady areas of the image. Right, so according to my histogram, spot on, ISO 100, 100th of a second at f11. Let's get my 2-second timer back on there again, and let's just focus on the first stanchion that's in front of me. That's roughly a third of the way into the frame. 100th of a second, it means that my histogram isn't showing any blinkers at all, no clipping whatsoever. So therefore, I'm going to grab that shot, and like I said earlier, because I'm exposing for a very bright sky, the underside of the pier is very, very dark. But all I want to do is just claw back a little bit of information. I don't expect this file to be able to claw back, you know, 3, maybe 4 stops of light, absolutely not. But if I can claw back 1 or 2 stops of light comfortably, then that's enough to offer me a little bit of detail on the underside of this pier, and that's all I'm looking for. I very often get asked where I draw my inspiration from for my own personal photography. And I can honestly say, hand on heart, most of my inspiration is drawn from magazines, both current and old. Massive magazine fan. And that's where Readly comes in handy, because Readly reached out to me and asked if they could sponsor this video. Well, I've been using Readly for the past 2.5 years, so for me, it's an easy sell and it's a no-brainer. If you want to know what Readly can do for you, then just bear with me for 30 seconds. Readly is a digital magazine subscription service that offers unlimited access to over 5,000 national and international magazines. You can browse high quality titles, both new and old. The key here being old. You can still draw inspiration from old magazine titles. I mean, after all, tech ages, but a good photo doesn't. I can almost guarantee you that there is a magazine for you. I mean, by virtue of the fact that you're here now, I'm guessing that you're into photography. If you're into photography, well, you've got photography magazines, you've got camera brand magazines, you've got tech magazines, you've got how-to magazines. I'm probably just scraping the surface here, but just flicking through page on page on page, you can draw inspiration from other people's work. You can look out for locations to go and photograph for yourself, or of course you could just immerse yourself in other people's work and other people's stories. But hey, you don't need me to keep banging on about how good the Readly app is. Go and find out for yourself. Just click the link down below and you'll get 6 weeks free access to their complete inventory of magazines. Go and have a look. After that, it'll cost you just £7.99 a month. That's cancelable at any time. But this is the pièce de résistance. You could have up to 5 users on the one subscription. What's £7.99 divided by 5? Well, hopefully you guys enjoyed my test-ins, and of course now we need to complete it by throwing these images into Photoshop. Scenario number 1, which is the cropping. I'm really interested to find out how much I can crop into these, huge files without loss of quality. I just want to point out one thing. I've spent a lot of time looking through these files, looking at these images quite extensively, making a comparison between both cameras, and I can see very little, if at all, any between them. Let me just get that out there right from the get-go. The dynamic range and the detail seems to be exactly the same on both cameras. They really, really do. But let's just take a closer look at some of the things that I'm more interested in. And the first one is the ability of both cameras to crop in really, really tight on these images. Let's see how far we can really crop in on these images without losing too much detail. Right, so let's look at this close-up image. Once again, I can zoom in all we want. I can have a good look round. The image is crisp and sharp on both of these files. That's the R5 underneath, and it looks amazing. On top is the 5D SR, and that looks also amazing. Honestly, I couldn't see the difference between them both. But what I wanted to do is to recreate this image here by using this file here. So let's bring up my crop tool. Let's keep the ratio, the original ratio, and okay, so let's zoom right in. As you can see, I'm going to guesstimate this, but it's something like that. Now that's a tight crop, if ever there was a tight crop. I'm literally disposing of 70% of this image and only keeping 30%. I don't know the result of this yet, by the way. So let's just click that tick button. And now let's zoom in. Oh, let's go at normal size. So once again, that's the image we're trying to recreate, or roughly. Okay, so I needed to go just a little bit tighter. Now that, without stating the obvious, is probably only using 20, maybe 25% of the original image. And that's roughly what I wanted to recreate with both of these files, because they're huge. I, for one, wanted to see how much I can crop in without loss of quality. So let's start to increase this image a little bit. Now, I've gone to 200% there, 200%, and I can clearly see on the 5DSR that we're starting to lose a bit of clarity and sharpness. And let's just check the image underneath, which is the R5. Yeah, and you can see it's exactly the same. Nothing is any different. Now I'm looking at what I would consider to be just 20, maybe 25% of the original image, and this still looks fantastic and would look good at this size, the size I'm currently looking at, which is probably 24 inches at the moment, and I'm sat this close to it and I can't really see, you know, much of a depreciation in file quality at all. Therefore, in my honest opinion, that would make a great print. I do believe, however, if you started to zoom in just a bit more, that's at 100%, let's go 200%. Now that's huge, don't get me wrong, but you can clearly see that there is a breakup in the file sizes there. Look along the edge there. Let's check this on the R5. And you can see the breakup there. They're exactly the same. So I'm really, really impressed by both of those cameras, their ability to crop in really tight. And don't forget, this is extreme. I've really, really gone to extremes here. You're not going to take a picture and then crop in 20%. You're not going to do that. But it's nice to know that if you needed to, then you could. In this scenario, I took both of these images and I heavily produced the images using my style of fine art photography. And when I say heavily produce them, I really, really did heavily produce these images. So I was pushing the exposure down by 2 stops and I was pushing the shadows up, you know, an awful lot. I mean, look at that. I can play around with both of these images and you can clearly see that there is no loss of quality, and the detail in here is stunning. The detail in here is stunning on both of these cameras, and again, I really, really couldn't tell the difference between them. When I create my fine art architectural photography, then I generally HDR the images. I like the skies nice and dark, so I generally underexpose for the sky, but I didn't do that with these images because that's what I didn't want to do. I've just simply used one image and I exposed for the brightest part of the image, which in this instance is the sky. And that's why the images look slightly underexposed. And then I've used the shadow slider to push it as far as I possibly can. And of course, the exposure and the whites and the blacks, you know, to suit. And again, I must admit, each camera, or both of these cameras, did not disappoint in any way, shape or form. If you want me to show you images that I played around with, let's take a look at these 2 images here, because these 2 images pretty much say it all. So again, both of these images, if I highlight both of these images like so, and what I'm going to do now is grab my highlight slider to pull that detail down in the sky. Remember, what I'm doing on this image will be applied to both, but this is the important thing. I'm going to grab that shadow slider and I'm going to push that shadow slider to the right, to the right, to the right, to the right. Now, ordinarily, I wouldn't need to push the slider that far to the right, because when I'm creating HDR, I mean, at the moment, this image looks like as if it's been processed like a HDR image. That's how much detail we've managed to claw out from the underside of this pier. But that's not how I would want the image to eventually look. But for the purpose of this exercise, I just find this very, very interesting, very interesting. It's dark under there, but I push that shadow slider up and up and up and up and up, and there it is. And again, what we're looking at here now is the R5. If I zoomed into the R5 here, then you can see all of that detail under here. Let's go more. I mean, that is 100%. Now the ISO is 100, so we know it's going to be a clean image, but look at all that gorgeous detail under here. This is performed much better than I anticipated. It really, really did. And if I look at the 5DSR and do the same thing, remember the settings are exactly the same. And if I move in again to 100%, all of the detail is here and also looks perfect. I want to just check one thing. In the name of fairness, I want to look at this area here. Bear in mind I'm 100%, so that means this file now, if it was printed, will be the size of a house end. It's huge. Let's look at the R5. Now, this is interesting because this is one of the differences I did find between both of these cameras. This image here is blown up to 100%. Just concentrate on this image of this area here. Both cameras exactly the same settings. Click on the 5 DSR. Here you can see a definite breakup in the image quality. Now I've had to push these settings that far to notice a difference. But of course that's where the R5 will come into its own, because make no bones about it, when you start pushing ISOs, for instance, when you start pushing those ISO numbers right up, you know, for like wedding photography or sports photography, then that's when the R5 will really come into its own. Make no bones about that. But this testing scenario that I find myself in is not a scenario, it's just a scenario I've created to test the cameras. And it's not a scenario I'd ever find myself in, because again, as I've done in the past so many times, I would have created multiple exposures here, and there, in which case you'd never have seen that. But it's still a very interesting point that the R5, make no bones about it, the R5 definitely comes out on top with this particular image and in this particular scenario. There's no question. I'm going to make all of these images available for you guys to download, by the way, so you can download and make these comparisons for yourself and play around with the images. Please do. And if you play around with the images, and again, please come back and let me know what your findings are. And yeah, just leave a comment down below and let me know if you agree with me, if you agree with my findings, or maybe, you know, you want to do your own tests on these files. But I'll make the files, all of these files, available for you guys to download yourself. Yeah, but that's really, really, really interesting. Really interesting. Looking at the R5 again, but pushing that, I can definitely see a massive difference when I've zoomed in that tight. Of course, pushing the shadows as far as I have pushed the shadows. That's a good test. I like that test. And fair dues to the R5. That is phenomenal. I think this is the 8th time that I've attempted to record this final bit. And the reason why is because this final bit is so important to me. It's so important to the video, but it's also important for you guys to know that it's coming from my head and not from my heart. I've thoroughly enjoyed using the R5. I've enjoyed making this video. I've put a lot of effort into making this video, and hopefully you guys will appreciate that. But now, rounding things up, I need to explain a couple of things. First and foremost, would I upgrade from the 5 DSR that I'm currently using as a landscape photographer to the R5? And the answer is no. To me, the only thing I would gain from the R5 as a landscape photographer is a flip out screen. And every now and again, I know I could maybe push the images that little bit more, but I would never be in a scenario, or I'd never put myself in that scenario whereby I would need to push that file or files. But look, from my head, I have to justify in business the reasons why I'm upgrading, whether it's because it's financially it's viable or because I need it. Do I need to upgrade to the R5? And the answer is quite simply no, it's not. But what's right for me might not be right for you. So whilst I'm babbling now, I'm babbling only based on my circumstances as a landscape photographer. Again, if I'm upgrading from the 5 DSR to the R5, I'm getting very little in return for a huge sum of money. If you're upgrading or thinking about upgrading from, let's say, for instance, a Canon 5D Mark II to the R5, then the upgrade is immense, and you know the technology will blow you away. But it's really, really important to remember one thing. Don't believe the hype. What I mean by that is, look, all camera manufacturers clearly are moving to the mirrorless system, and I don't have a problem with that. The mirrorless systems offer extra whistles and bells that you don't get from a mirrored system. I know that. But for you to upgrade to a mirrorless system of something like the stature of the R5, can you justify all those whistles and bells? As a landscape photographer, the answer is no. I mean, we know how good the R5 is, but I don't need to shoot landscapes at 20 frames per second. I don't need super fast, immense quality when it comes to videoing. I don't do any of that with my 5DSR. I don't need to. Do I need super fast eye detection, sports, focus? The answer is no. But of course, if you do, then, without stating the obvious, put your hard-earned cash into the R5. There's no question. I am not having a go at the R5. But ruling from your head, ultimately, whether it's got a mirror or whether it doesn't have a mirror, the ultimate aim as a photographer is to put data on the back of your sensor. The mirror is irrelevant. It's all about putting data onto your sensor, uploading that data onto your PC or Mac or laptop or whatever, and then post-processing the files. Ultimately, as a landscape photographer, and I will stress this again, it's about the sensor, it's about the data, and it's about how we can manipulate that data in post-production. Now that is how it sits for me. It might not sit like that for you. It might not. Only you will know that answer. But what I will stress is, and I can't stress this enough, don't believe the hype. Moving from a mirrored camera to a mirrorless camera is nothing like moving from film to digital. It's nothing like moving from a 12-inch single to a CD. It's nothing like it. Are all camera manufacturers going to produce mirrorless cameras in the future? Of course they are. They're going to stop, if they haven't already stopped, producing mirrored cameras. Absolutely. Will I end up buying a mirrorless camera? Absolutely. I use a mirrorless camera now. My M50 is a mirrorless camera. I don't have a problem shooting with a mirrorless camera. I just need to justify every time I upgrade my camera. I've only just recently upgraded from my 5D Mark III to my 5DSR because I've not needed it in the past. So I suppose that's my findings, really. That's my findings. My findings are the camera is immense, but so is the camera that I'm currently using for landscape photography. Have you noticed I've stressed that enough because I know what the comments are going to be like. But do me a favor. I'm going to make these files available for you guys to download. They're the raw files. You can do what you want with them. Blow them up. You can play around with the files till your heart's content. You'll either agree with me or disagree with me. But do me a favor. Let me know your findings down below. Leave some comments down below. But please spare yourself from leaving comments like, yes, but the R5 is much better at sport. Because I know that. I already know that, but that is not what this comparison is all about. It's all about me making a comparison as a landscape photographer. Just want to thank Readly for sponsoring this video as well. All the information about Readly you can find down below in the description area of this video. And I also want to thank Colin immensely. Colin, thank you very much indeed for lending me your camera in the first instance. Colin is just a follower of the channel and he knew I was after an R5, rung me up and said, Gary, I have an R5, do you want to borrow it for a week? I am eternally grateful to Colin for that. Thank you very much indeed. And I was gutted when I gave it to him back, if I'm honest, but surprisingly I had to either that or do a runner to another country. Right, that's it. Download the files, have a look for yourself, and only you can judge. You be the judge. So that's it. Hopefully you guys have enjoyed this content. If you have, if you're new here and you want to find your way back, do me a favor, subscribe and hit that notification bell as well. I've got some great videos and tutorials coming up. And that's it. Help support the channel by giving it a thumbs up and all that paraphernalia. Until the next time, guys, cheers.